Hello, everyone.
Hi, Shani. I can hear you.
Hi.
Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Food Recall Hackathon. My name is Shanice Sriyankison, and I am the Vice Chairperson of the MySAAFoST group. Yesterday, all participants were briefed and divided into groups. Each group was assigned a individual recall case as well as questions that needed to be answered for today. Today on the agenda is presentations by the 5 groups. Each group is allocated 5 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes as a Q&A session, followed by a guest speaker. Ms. Rika Kemp will give us a presentation on food recall. Thereafter, the judging panel will deliberate and prizes will be awarded to the winning team. So without further ado, our first group composed of Vutali Nechukdungi, apologies if I say your name incorrectly, Alexandra Kosidis, and Shange Mugoba. Are you all here?
Yes, we are, but there's only 2 of us that managed to come up with something. Hello, did you hear me? Shanice?
I can hear you. I'm not sure if Shanice can.
Oh, okay, great.
You guys want to go ahead with your presentation?
Sure, no problem. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Vutali, can you hear me? Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready, Ashia. I don't know if you can hear me. Am I audible?
We can hear
Yes,
you.
you are.
You started in the wrong slide.
I'm on the first slide now. Just let me know if it's corresponding that side.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Greetings, esteemed judges and fellow competitors. My name is Shangenda Mwana Mungoba, and I will be presenting on case study number 1, together with Miss Vutali Nejikudini. Clostridium botulinum is a bacterium that is known to cause botulism. It is reportedly rare, however, when it colonizes an infant's digestive tract, the consequences may be devastating. The following are symptoms of botulism: muscle weakness, difficulty in breathing, poor feeding, ptosis or sunken eyes, constipation, weak crying, and even worse, sudden death. Symptoms may manifest after 12 to 36 hours after ingestion. Recovery period ranges from weeks to even months. According to HACCP principles, Clostridium botulinum is a biological hazard. Sorry. To identify the critical control points or CCPs, one needs to make use of the 12 HACCP processing steps, which include establishing PRPs or prerequisite programs and a flow diagram, as you can see in the picture. Clostridium botulinum is a heat-resistant spore former. However, pasteurization, as you can see, is highly identified. You have to heat treat for at least 85 degrees for 5 minutes as an eliminating step. Every step in the flow diagram was assessed using the HACCP decision tree. We found that pasteurization is the only CCP. Vutali?
The steps to be followed while recalling the food product. Firstly, the recall management team must be assembled. This is where each member is informed of the decision to recall and they must know their responsibilities. Authorities must be informed. You must let them know the problem you're facing and describe the product you would like to recall. All the period food product to be recalled must be identified. Determine the brand of the product you want to recall. Quarantine all the identified products. All the identified period food stored in the firm must not be distributed and must be separated from other products. Inform the public and everyone involved in the supply chain as early as possible. Let them know the brand name, the size, the batch and code number, the manufacturing date, the use by date or the best before date. Trace all the organizations or retailers that the period food was distributed to. Verify the effectiveness of the recall steps that you followed so far. Inform the authorities of the progress of the recall by providing a recall status response once in a week. Make sure that the recalled product does not return to the market. Decide what should happen to the returned product, whether it should be destroyed or reprocessed. The decision must be approved by the authorities. Fix the cause of the recall by initiating new or revising the control points in place to avoid another breakout. The preventative measures that the companies can adopt are: make sure that the supplier of raw materials are trusted. Employees involved in the production line must be well trained. Implement high standard hygiene procedures where they make sure that the firm and the equipment are always clean. Control points must be regulated properly and accordingly. Different products must be packed separately. The control room conditions must be appropriate for the product. Microbiological tests must be conducted to avoid another breakout. The ways in which the companies can protect the image are: the company can issue a press release and break the news to the public themselves. Be responsible for the medical expenses of consumers who were affected. Let the public be aware of the precautions that will be followed to avoid another crisis. Have a transparent and honest post-recall communication with the public. Try to follow up what is being said on social media or news and be responsive. The company must completely cooperate with the authorities. People who already purchased the period food product must be compensated. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for these two lovely ladies?
Cynthia has her hand up.
Hi, ladies.
Hi, Cynthia.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful presentation. I just want to find out, in the case that supply chain has been involved, and there has been communication that there is a recall of a certain product. What happens with regards to trade? Because we have different customers, and what happens with recalling when it comes to the trade side? How can the plant make sure that whatever that is produced has been received back from trade? And in that process, how can supply chain then also come into play and assist the plant with that?
Okay, thank you for the question.
Okay.
What I can say is that the production company can like keep tracks of everything, like who they distributed to and on which day, and like keep track if everything they took out returned to the place.
Can I support my partner?
Yes, most definitely.
Thank you for the question. The system that we have in our carrot puree plant is we do things, we practice recall before having to actually have an incident where we need to conduct a recall. This is what we call a mock recall. As per HACCP requirements, our company needs to perform a procedure where we are tasked on how to collect traceability documents, and also how to reconcile the weight of the product that was produced, and also totaling to what was sent out to the customers. This process is done by all the suppliers and all the wholesalers and distributors in the supply chain. And together, once they are all ensuring that they are all HACCP certified, because each supplier only does this mock recall practice from the first point of consumer. So for example, if it's coming from the manufacturer, we keep track until the wholesaler, and the wholesaler will keep track on the stock of the retailers, and the retailers would keep track of how much product was sold out on the point of sale. And now this is a preventative measure that we do to ensure that the actual recall, once it happens, we do the same thing. Now, in a similar scenario, let's assume that this is a real life scenario where the company is tasked to do so. We ensure that all the batch numbers that were produced on a certain day by weight matches what was sent out. And to destroy the product, after having to communicate with our lawyers and insurance on how to implement a press release, an effective one at that, we have to make sure that our customers not only get the claims or be compensated for the product, we also ensure that there is responsible condemnation or destroying of the product that was to be recalled. For example, the subcontracted company or the government or municipal service that was tasked to collect the product that was segregated, they have to give us a certificate of ownership. This means that once the affected product that was released or that was recalled from all points of the supply chain is weighed and identified and listed as high risk, the place of destruction, or where the place where the product is going to be discarded or destroyed or burned is then insured, or rather ownership is given to that supplier or municipality. So this is because the public can have access to this high-risk product, and we would not want to have underprivileged people having access to these sites. And also we ensure that it's done following the Environmental Protection Acts. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There's a question from Professor Alma Bay.
Good afternoon. I just need to ask a question about something that you indicated relating to pasteurization affecting the organism in question. Very quickly, don't take too long, please. Just indicate to me, in terms of Clostridium botulinum, what would be the time temperature needed to eliminate the spore?
The time and temperature is 85 degrees and at a minimum of 5 minutes.
And that is for Clostridium botulinum.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to leave it there.
Sorry,
in the
can
interest of-
I disturb it?
It's just quickly, yes.
I think it's 3 minutes at 121 degrees Celsius.
Okay. Yes. So in terms of that, in terms of the decision you then made related to your slides, can you then see that there unfortunately was in terms of the decision you made for the CCP, unfortunately there was a miscalculation.
Okay, I saw that. I thought maybe if we said greater than.
Okay. No, good. Okay. No. So as long as we are all on the same page for that, but thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ladies. And an error on my side. I forgot to introduce our judges, so apologies. Our 3 judges is Professor Alna Bays, Ms. Rika Kemp, and Mr. Cleleo Marule. So welcome to them and apologies again. So our second group for this afternoon is Jade Tobin and Mary Beguiled. Are you here? Jade, Mary. I do not see them on the chat, so I guess they didn't join. So we will move on to group 3, which is Tafara Dwefungwa and Galma Mabasa. Are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Unfortunately, Gelma couldn't make it because of work commitments, so I'm going to do this by myself.
Okay, all the best.
Thank you. And am I able to share my screen?
Yes, please.
Kindly let me know when you can. Is my screen visible?
Not yet.
Let me try again. Okay. I'm struggling here. I seem to have a problem here. Is it okay if you move to the next group? Then maybe I can present after them.
Okay, that's not an issue. So our group 4 is Luyanda, Madi Kizela, and Sianda Nkosi. Are you here?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Welcome. Do you want to go ahead and share your screen, Luyanda?
Yes, ma'am, I'll share my screen now. Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Good day to everyone. My case study was based on a food recall on a complaint where consumers said that the packet of chips that was produced by a company was over-seasoned. Now, in order to initiate this food recall, it is important that we follow a few steps before the food products are recalled from the shelves. So a few of these steps that can be followed are doing a rapid comprehensive risk assessment where we identify the hazard, determine the risk associated with this hazard, and assess the consequences of the risk, and to also do a dose response assessment where we identify how much of the product that consumers would have to consume to experience adverse health reactions. We would also have to formulate a risk management plan on how we are going to eradicate the risk, whether the food will be recalled from the shelves, or if the food will be recalled and reprocessed or will be discarded. Now, a risk assessment of the chips that were over-seasoned, it is assuming that the over-seasoned flavor that the consumers complained about is as a result of the oversalting or the addition of a higher concentration of spices and sodium-based spice seasonings, and therefore this can be identified as a chemical hazard that poses the risk to human health, especially when the package of chips will be consumed more than twice a day or frequently. Now, this risk to human health is hypertension, which can lead to further diseases such as cardiovascular diseases, preeclampsia in pregnant women, which ultimately has a negative effect on the quality of life. So therefore, it is after a risk assessment, then it is important that we determine the critical control points and where the issue occurred in the production line. So considering that the potatoes are a low acid food product, they require extensive preservation steps in order to ensure food safety in terms of the microbiological safety of the product. However, since we are concerned about the chemical hazard, then frying for example, seasoning and the aseptic packaging step in the process in the production line are the main critical control points that we are, concerned about. So the seasoning, it depends on the concentration of the seasonings that is added onto the packet of chips. The concentration of the seasoning has to follow the standards and the reference that are applied. Now, when the decision has been made to recall the food products, the company that produced these chips has to notify the National Consumer Commission and follow the guidelines as stated by the National Consumer Commission. They have to halt production of the batch and notify all relevant parties of the recall and of the issues with those products that were produced. So notify the international recipients, the retail shops, the distributors, and the consuming public. And then the product should be removed from the shelves. And then the recall management team of that specific company needs to decide on what will happen to the recalled product. So for instance, if the company decides that they will recall the product and then reprocess them and then produce them again, then they would have to put up distribution or transportation systems that would take the food products from the shops, the retail shops, the international recipients or distributors. And if they're going to discard them, they would also need to put out have a system in place on how they're going to discard and where they're going to discard these food products. Then after the food product has been removed from the shelves, then the company can perform an extensive analysis investigating all the issues that occurred during the production line that led to the overseasoning of the chips. And with all that being said, it is important that the company keeps record of everything that occurs during the food recall system. Now, the preventative measures that can be put in place by the company is firstly investing in well-trained employees. So hiring employees that are well-trained and are knowledgeable in understanding the risks that are associated with any deviations of the HACCP system during the production line. There has to be sampling at each point in distribution line to ensure the addition of a correct concentration of the seasoning and to ensure that there are no deviations from the standard. And the company also has to ensure traceability of their product so that they know which product is affected and they can easily remove it from the shelves. In order for the company to protect its image, it has to keep the consumers informed about the corrective measures taken against the food recall. It also has to issue out safe statements that have been approved by government or the National Consumer Council that ensure the safety of the food product and that ensure that it is safe for consumption. They can also rebrand the specific product, maybe change the product name, change the product packaging. They can also change the shape of the actual chips themselves. And they can also offer refunds to the people who have consumed that specific batch of chips that was overseasoned. Thank you for your time. I would like to open the floor to any questions.
Luyanda, Cleleo Marule is with me at work here, so he has a question for you.
Hello, Leander.
Hello.
Can you please go back to your process flow diagram? There's something that I need to see there because I have a question concerning your CCP. On this process flow diagram, can you please show me or tell me which step is your CCP, your critical control point? Hello, Leander.
The 13th step.
13. Okay. And so how many CCPs do you have in this process flow diagram?
3 critical control points.
Is which one and which one?
It's the step 11, the frying of the potatoes. Step 13, which is seasoning, and step 14, which is packaging.
Okay. And so according to your, maybe your recall procedure, what constitutes a recall? According to the procedure that you have as a company, as a manufacturer, what will constitute a recall? Especially coming from that step 13, what will constitute a recall?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Just for an example, just to give an example, let's say a company B has stipulated in their recall procedure that if we have 3 customer complaints on this product, it will constitute a recall. If we have, let's say, a microbial load above the specified, it will constitute a recall. So something like that. So I just want to know, on that step 13, what have you put as points or as things that will constitute a recall?
So what the company has put in place is that when there is a complaint on the amount of seasoning that is added onto the packet of chips, we would require, sorry, if there's a complaint that the amount of seasoning that was added in the packet of chips caused an adverse health reaction, such as hypertension or any health reaction, then it would require the consumer to sort of provide some sort of evidence on that it was mainly caused by that. So maybe they can provide a dietary plan consisting of like almost everything that they've had during that week, and have like a medical certificate to accompany that.
Okay, because the reason I asked that, I think I was looking for maybe the critical limits on that step, so that to see what are your critical limits on that step. I think that's the reason why I asked that question.
Thank you, Luanda. Mrs. Rika Kim had a question for you. So Rika, do you want to unmute and ask your question? I can see you, Rika, but I cannot hear you. Not a problem. Thank you, Loyanda, for your presentation. Well done. So we're moving back to group 3, which is Tafara. So Tafara, do you want to share your screen for us?
All right. So if you can help me by sharing the screen. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tafara. So I'll be doing the case study on cleaning chemical reagents detected in ready-to-eat salad packs. On the hazard identification, please move to the next slide. This is a chemical hazard, which could be any cleaning reagent, be it caustic or Frexis, which is chlorine. So the risks associated with this, amongst the risks that are there, just to mention a few, would be burning of tissues from the lips to the stomach. Inhalation of these chemicals could result in nose irritation and severe lung damage, and this may be fatal to the extent of causing death. The consequences associated with such risks would include losses for the company, loss of sales because of the recall, and also damaged company reputation. And then the next slide would be the process flow diagram for the ready-to-eat salad production. Shanice, please help me. Yes, so that's the process flow diagram indicating the sources of the chemical hazards and also MySAAFoST. Next slide, please. Then the critical control points and the critical limits for the ready-to-eat salads. MySAAFoST would be the rinsing, which is a 3-part wash system that can be used to ensure adequate rinsing. The first part being the submerging in water, second part, the vibrating conveyor through a second wash tank, and finally, overhead sprays. My critical limits for the clean detergents would be that the solution for antimicrobial treatment, the antimicrobial treatment is a stage on the process flowchart that introduces chemicals. So the solution for that antimicrobial treatment should contain a total chlorine of a range of between 100 and 150 parts per million. That's the acceptable levels. And then the critical limit for the equipment and surface cleaning detergent should have sodium hydroxide concentration within acceptable ranges of 0.5 to 2%. Note well that the rinse water should always have the lowest concentration, which is below 0.5%. Next slide. And the steps to be followed when recalling the product would, assuming that there is a recall team in place already, they would need to compile a list of the distribution outlets where the ready-to-eat salad went, and then notify all stakeholders within the distribution chain through the decided communication platforms, and also send out a press release if it is necessary, then gain control of all the recalled product. This is done through traceability, that is maybe using the batch numbers to get back the product that was contaminated, and verify the recall effectiveness, that is making sure it's out of circulation, take the appropriate corrective action. In this case, it would be disposal because chemical contamination is fatal. And then if all this is done, then we terminate the recall. Next slide, please. And then what preventative measures can be adopted by the company? With reference to one of the PRPs, in the technical specification for catering, under section 4.14, under maintenance, a preventative maintenance program shall be in place and should include all devices used to monitor or control chemical hazards. So there would be need to then review the cleaning regime, and that is the specifications for sodium hydroxide will need to be reviewed, maybe to lower levels, which will still be effective for cleaning, but easy enough to rinse, and then allow a time gap after CIP before production resumes. This also allows minimum chemical contamination to the product. And then cleaning detergents should be stored as far as possible from the production site and also from the product to avoid contamination. And there should be designated vehicles for production, transportation, and for chemical transportation to avoid cross-contamination. Next slide, please. Then the steps the company will take to protect its image. It is important that the company breaks the news itself. This shows responsibility acceptance and also builds a form of trust with the retailers and consumers. They should also offer a clear resolution, transparency with the retailers and consumers, and they should be truthful and in notifying them on the decided communication platforms, and details on how the product will be removed from the market should be appropriately outlined. All affected consumers should be provided with steps to ensure their health and redeem any compensation. Preventative measures should be put in place to avoid recurrence. That is maybe implementation of food safety systems. Well, if they're already there, then they'll have to review their procedures, SOP and PRPs. Next slide, please. Then this is just a root cause analysis they could use as a company to then identify where could this have, what could have caused this. It might have been during the CIP or during the transportation, or chemical hazards arising from high concentrations of the chemicals under the antimicrobial treatment. Then the storage of raw materials might have been done in an area previously used for chemical storage and not adequately cleaned. This is just a root cause analysis that the company may use to then prevent this from happening again. Thank you so much for listening. I'm done.
Thank you, Tarifa. Well done. Any questions for her? Leo has a question for you.
Hello, Tafara.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. I think my question would be, who will be responsible for the review? Let's say you want to review your preventative measures that are in place. You want to review the recall that are there, that have been the previous one and this one. Just my point is, when you do a review, there's a team that is assembled.
Yes.
So in your case, who will do the review? Who is appointed? Who initiates that review?
Okay, this review could be done by the HACCP team. I'm sure in the organization that would have a systems coordinator who coordinates the systems within the company as well as in the trade. So maybe the review would be actually a meeting adjourned for a meeting done with the HACCP team together with the recall team. I'm sure it might be one team or different team depending on how the organization is complex.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
Again, Tafara.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yes, I was just saying a question.
Okay.
The effectiveness of your recall, how do you test it even before you have the recall or any incident that requires a recall, how do you test the effectiveness of your recall?
Okay, I'm sure this has been mentioned before. Before a recall actually happens, there is a requirement from HACCP that there is supposed to be a mock recall. So when a mock recall is done, we're then supposed to test if we can get all the product from the market. So I'm sure the effectiveness will be tested through the mock recall. And in a case that there is actually a product recall, there would have to be maybe extra measures to test if the recall was effective.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. I guess we are done, so there's no more questions for you. Well done.
Thank you.
Our last group today and our last presenter is Miss Rutando Bell. Good afternoon, Rutando.
Hi, Shanice.
Do you want to go ahead and share your screen?
Yes. I'm having trouble sharing my screen, Shanice.
Do you want to quickly email me your presentation and then I'll share it for you?
I can do that, yes. Have you seen it, Shanice?
It hasn't come through yet. And you can begin.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My case was on milk chocolate. So 5 scholars admitted in hospital after consuming a milk chocolate bar manufactured in a processing line that uses peanuts. Next page, Shanice. So the hazard analysis, the hazard associated with milk chocolate would mostly be microbial, the risk being Salmonella and E. coli. The source of these microorganisms would be the raw materials, most likely the cocoa beans, and post-process handling. Consequences would be bacterial infection of the GIT with symptoms including vomiting, diarrhea, fever, chills, and abdominal pain. Shanice? So that's just a process flow of milk chocolate manufacture. And the critical control points are the ones that I have highlighted in red. So the raw materials, particularly the cocoa butter and cocoa liquor, and then the conching, which is the which is where the refined materials is subjected to severe mechanical treatment with rollers, and there's also heat treatment there. Then the casting and molding is after the chocolate has been cooled, but there's exposure of the product to the environment, particularly on conveyor belts. So there's a risk of people having to handle these products manually. That's during both casting and molding, as well as wrapping and labeling. Shanice? So the steps to be followed when recalling a product. First, there would need to be internal validation of the hazard through production records, retention samples, analysis, etc. Then determination of which of the product has been affected. Then the product is withdrawn from the market. Relevant authorities are notified, the consumers are notified through public media, and then there's monitoring and control of the product that has been recalled. The product that has been recalled will have to be disposed of, and the cause of the contamination fixed. Shanice? Preventive measures would be to invest in effective recurrent training for employees, since there is manual handling of the product along the processing line, and then to establish more rigorous pre-receipt quality checks to mitigate the issue of raw material contamination, and then to reinforce check for quality throughout the production process, particularly processing temperatures. Shanice? Steps to protect the company image would be to partner with the legal team for advice on the best course of action after the product has been recalled, as well as to communicate and reassure the consumers of product safety, and to address any concerns that the consumers might have concerning the product or any other products that the particular company manufactures. That will be it from me. Are there any questions?
Rutando. So any questions for Rutando? Mr. Kaleo has a question for you.
Okay.
Hello, Rutando.
Yes, hello.
In your case, you have 5 scholars admitted in hospital after consuming a milk chocolate bar manufactured in a processing line that uses peanuts.
Yes.
And then when we go into your hazard category, and even on your CCP, most of your hazards there, they're microbial hazards, am I correct?
Yes.
Is there anywhere you mentioned allergens?
I was working under the assumption that this is already labeled on the product. And also, what are the chances that more than 1 or 2 students would have an allergy to peanuts? So I eliminated the allergens because I was working under the assumption that, number 1, the chocolate is properly labeled, because I do understand that product recalls that are done because of allergens would be in the case of maybe the product is not properly labeled, or the information is not clearly indicated that there is an allergen. That's why I didn't focus on allergens.
Yeah, because from what I understand, even if it was for milk chocolate bar, but it seems like it was manufactured in a processing line that uses peanuts. That it doesn't necessarily, my understanding, it doesn't necessarily say the chocolate bar had peanuts in it. this can be a cross-contamination. It's just the way I'm looking at it. And when you remember, allergens are also critical hazards that must be considered. Especially remember, when you consider the risks associated with peanuts, if you look at the studies out there, I think there's what you call anaphylaxis, difficulty in breathing. That's something that is very, very critical. So I think that is, my question is around that, on your hazard category.
Can I ask the next question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Very good presentation, a lot of detail. Thanks very much for that. Did you consider the role of PRPs in this recall, like not effective cleaning and therefore salmonella buildup might occur or something similar?
I did, but I then indicated that that would have been addressed at the conching stage. So if there's adequate heating for the recommended time, then that would have been been gotten rid of during processing. The only risk would then have come from the casting and molding stages, as well as the wrapping, since the product goes through a conveyor, which is most likely exposed to the atmosphere. And there is a risk of also cross-contamination through manual handling.
I hear what you say.
Prof. Bayes?
Hi, Rutendo. Yes, I want to link to what Laleo said. I can't remember now whether you did include peanuts as a risk in your process, but what I would like to ask you is, okay, so in terms of the case study, there isn't enough information for us to know whether these children became ill immediately or whether it was in a period, over a period of time. But my question is, can you tell me what is the difference between intoxication and someone becoming ill of a infection? And which one would be immediate and which one would take place only after a few days of consuming the product?
Afternoon, Prof. So infection would be caused by the actual live bacterial cells when they're ingested, whereas intoxication would be a result of toxins that are produced by the bacteria. So if we're talking of salmonella, then it would be a bacterial infection. I think I did indicate somewhere in my presentation that there's a bacterial infection of the GIT.
Yeah, so if there was more information, possibly in a case study, on whether the children, you know, became acutely ill immediately, then you could have eliminated salmonella, for instance.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's right. But since so you sort of chose a route and then explained it very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Rotando. And that was our last presentation from the groups. So thank you to all the presenters this afternoon. And now we're moving on to a guest presentation by Ms. Rika Kemp.
Good afternoon. Can I start sharing my presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay. One can see I've tested it earlier because I'm at the last slide. Thank you very much for this honor. It's really nice to meet, and thanks for the very good presentations. On the slides, it's a few principles, and I would like to share with you what I've learned through auditing, consulting, and being involved in food recalls. The question was posed is that, are we in a season of South African food recalls? And perhaps it's a bit wider than that, because Purity announced a recall on their baby talc powder that might contain, and I would like to emphasize that, because in recalls we work with potentially unsafe product. Not each and every product might be a hazard. Purity announced a recall on the talc powder because it might contain some asbestos. Are we thus in a season of food safety recalls or not? No, it's not a season. And to me, as a food safety expert, it is quite a good thing that we are in recalls. This is voluntary food recalls. And it gives us a sign that there's some compliance with regulatory requirements and some effective food safety management systems in place. It tells us that people are working out there to detect their own problems and to prevent potentially unsafe product to actually reach the consumer. I just want to stand still here for a minute or two. I do take it that all the case studies actually included actual food safety hazards. But recalls are not only done because of food safety hazards. It can be done because of quality, customer requirements not met. And all of them are important to the company for brand protection, to make sure the image out there is good. And we have to follow all of them in good faith. Therefore, we can classify recalls, just recall from one customer because they are unhappy with the product, a quality recall, which might be limited, or then a full-scale recall where we have really a food safety issue. Regulatory compliance to Consumer Protection Act, Clause 6, and there's a good recall guidelines and the likes, includes all types of recall that is on a national base, not the one or two items we might collect from a customer or a load that comes back. This is real recalls, quality and food safety. In my work, I'm actually amazed of how little people know whom to contact. In your recall procedure, make sure that you know who to contact. Where must this notification go to? Recently, the commissioner changed. The telephone number might have changed. The people you might talk to might have changed. In a recall, it's quite a stressed atmosphere. We need to know what to do. So also need to know whom to contact in this case. In the guidelines, those that haven't studied them, it's quite worthwhile because there's a lot of information to take you through it. And even if you don't want to notify the Consumer Protection Act Commissioner, it's good guidelines to follow in your own recall procedure. Then we also have to comply with Regulation 638. And Clause 18 asks of us to have a full traceability system in place, and that a recall activation must be reported to the local inspector and the National Director of Food Control. Do we know whom it is? I got an email a day or two ago, whom to contact in case of fake honey on the market. That is the National Directorate of Food Control. So that company might not know whom to contact in a recall as well. Who's the local inspector? The environmental health practitioner might not be known to the company. And in a recall, we don't want the stress to get hold of contact numbers, telephone numbers. An effective food safety management system is also a requirement if you want to deliver into retail. It's just a customer requirement as well. So besides the legal, there's also customer requirements to comply with. Your specific customer might have specific recall requirements. Make sure you know what it is. Build it into your system. Be familiar with it. And I've heard this afternoon once or twice it was say, get the product back from the market. Now, if your customer sits in Timbuktu, in Saudi Arabia, how do we get it back? So in this case, make sure what your customer requires, how you can isolate that product, and make sure it's not sold, because you can't get it back if it's overseas. Recall is a place in it, have a place in an effective food safety management system. What is a recall actually? It's a correction. It's something we do now to get things under control. So the first aim of a recall is to prevent people consuming that product. So we want to isolate the potential unsafe product and make sure people is not eating it. So that's why we sometimes goes on the 7 o'clock news, give all the batch numbers and details so that people isolate it from the cupboard. We give them the opportunity to bring it back to the organization that manufactured it. We make sure that there's an effective food safety management system in place so that consumption of that product stops immediately. I've heard this afternoon, the retailer know what was sold. Yes, they know what was sold, but they don't know where it went to. So if it's my brand and I want to protect my brand, I must make sure that I know how to contact those people. Where are they living? Is it a national? Is it regional? Is it okay if I put a sign up at the local spa? Or must I go onto national television? That will all form part of my recall procedure. So in the recall, we make sure that we can isolate and prevent. But that's not where it stops. We have to do a full investigation into the causes. Now, and that we mentioned that this afternoon a couple of times already, preventative actions must now follow. So we must make sure where it originated from. And root cause is quite an art, a skill. We need to know what type of root cause analysis we're going to do. Are we going to use the fishbone, the 5 whys? Is there any other method we might design to use that and actually get down to the bottom why this happened? Because we can't afford this to happen again. We have to prevent this happening. So what do we need? We need an incident management by a trained team. We need to know how to isolate the product, at least from the first point of delivery. But a number of us use actually service providers, third-party transportation companies. We need to know where they are going. If I deliver under a house brand and I deliver it into that retailer's depot, that's where I most probably have control over, and that's where my recall will stop, notifying them, or they will notify me. Depends on where it originated from. But if it's my brand name, if I want to protect my brand name, just asking, do we really stop at the first point of delivery? So in this recall, we have to have a detailed, planned procedure. A detailed, planned procedure. I can't emphasize that enough. We need to know what's the actions, the sequence of the actions, who will start, who will take decisions, who will talk to the press, who will make sure the customers is known. Each of the incident management team members must have a specific role and must be trained in that role. When we have a recall, there's a lot of stress going around. There's no time then to train people or thrash things out. Now, in most of the GFSI benchmark and retail audits, it's a requirement to do a mock recall exercise. From experience and documents I see, most of these, sometimes somebody that did a mock recall exercise, purely a traceability study, a desk exercise, and don't even contact the world out there. So the moment we really have to do it, we don't know where to go to. Make sure that the mock recall exercises is actually a dummy run for a full recall. The best I've ever seen was a company that had the principle to get somebody to phone in with a so-called complaint, and then they react on that. It's unannounced. So it's not like we will do our mock recall next week. It's unannounced, and the full recall procedure have to be followed, besides bringing back the product or isolating the product. That way we can really make sure everybody knows what to do, where and when. And in this case, it doesn't matter whether it's a quality or a food safety. In this case, we want to protect the brand. And we want to make sure people don't consume the product. Though more important in a food safety issue. To be able to recall, we need an effective traceability system. To really know how much did we deliver, to whom, what was produced initially, what was the losses amongst the line, to make sure that we know what was sent out. Coming back to the mock recall and connecting it to the traceability system, one might think of actually recall on basis of incoming goods that was not within specification. So one have to trace that batch of starch or whatever you decide as a starting point, to trace that right through your production and actually to see, can we do that? Do we know where it went to? And do a good mass balance. And remember, if you get more than what you anticipated, it doesn't say it's within spec, because it might now be 2 batches or 3 batches mixed, and you don't know what's happening. We've already said recall is for brand protection, and all the people that did presentations this afternoon highlighted that perfectly. I want to end and just put something on the table. In most of the cases this afternoon, we talked about a CCP, and that's why we had to initiate the recall, because the CCP was not in place. I read a lot of recall notifications from the FDA and from funds. And as I sit here, I can't think of one recall lately, perhaps last 5 years actioned, because a critical control point was not in place. Most of them is because prerequisite programs are not in place. So I think we need to look at it bigger. We need to look at the fact that the different control measures have a different level of control, but they are all of the same importance. Any questions?
Thank you, Rika, for that amazing presentation. I'm sure our students here learned a lot from that. So is there any questions from the audience?
Yes, I have my hand up.
Okay, please go ahead.
I have a question with regards to that interesting mock recall exercise where a person would have to call in and pretend as if there's a customer complaint. I am curious to know if there's a time limit set and is this an internal procedure, or it's assuming they have a third party to do the audit or inspection of that procedure?
The example mentioned, it was purely a mock recall exercise. That company have the policy to do twice a year, but they found out that if they have the mock recall exercise scheduled and make sure everybody is available and all of that, it is actually an artificial situation. I don't think a recall is scheduled. If we have a real recall, it will be something that we have an action or some way we will have to react on a lab result, a customer complaint, internal non-conformity reported, or something similar. And there's no schedule for such. There's no notification for such. So what that company did very effectively simulate a real recall environment to see if their procedure is working, because that's why we do the mock recall, to assess whether people are trained and whether the procedure is effective. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Thanks. Next.
Good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I have a question. Thank you, Rika, for such an informative presentation. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking of myself as a consumer who does not have any knowledge with regards to food science or food technology or food safety. When we're having these recalls, and correctly you're saying that they are a correction, however, at the level of a consumer who has no knowledge of food safety or very limited knowledge of food science, there's always a fear attached when we hear on the 7 o'clock bulletin on the news that we are recalling a particular food product because of X, Y, Z. So my question is mainly lined to that. Are we in South Africa in the food industry educating our customers enough with regards to food recall, with regards to food safety? And in your expertise or in your knowledge, do you think there's room for us to improve or room to do anything about that? And second to that, I'm mainly basing this in the back mind of what we had with listeriosis 2017 to 2018, that post that, shouldn't we as food science professionals or even the regulatory bodies, government officials be investing more in educating our customers? Because the announcement, it's a recall that is happening, it's a corrective measure. Yes, it's done by the companies. But on the other hand, we hardly see any invested effort in educating our customers that really, when we're recalling, is not saying that this is bad, this is not good for you. It is a corrective measure to prevent something from happening. So I'm just thinking in terms of the consumer. Are we really educating our consumers who are none the wiser with regards to food safety, with regards to recalls? Thanks.
Thanks, very good question. I agree. We don't educate the consumer enough. But if we sit down, it's not the only thing we don't educate the consumer enough. And it might be the easier way in the way we communicate the recall, that the education can be done. I had this experience that somebody stopped to buy Tastic rice after the announcement of the Sudan Red, which was in that fully cooked product that they imported from India a couple of years ago. And that product was a very, very low level. I think it was less than 1% of the turnover of Tastic. And somebody told me she stopped buying Tastic due to the recall. When I explained it, a clear and definite answer came. I'm very busy, and that lady have her own law practice. I am very busy, so I don't have time to investigate. I've just heard on the radio of the recall and I stopped buying Tastic. So I think what I've learned from that incident is that one actually have to make very sure when the company is communicating initially the recall, to perhaps do it in a different way. Perhaps say we recall as a preventative measure or something similar. There's people that can think of much better words than I'm thinking, but that might be an option. What is your viewpoint on this one?
Thank you. I think so. Like I said, that my view is on that with a customer is always a fear associated with it. And we never really get to the details as in like, yes, it's a preventative measure. Why is it a preventative measure? And rightly so, do not avoid certain food products because of this. The whole point of actually the report is maybe to prevent that. And I do believe that we have a lot of room in South Africa to educate our customers with regards to food safety, with regards to food recalls, and assurance. And at the back of end of that is also the fact that we're seeing a lot of individuals in South Africa going towards the food entrepreneurship side. And again, not a lot of information with regards to food safety. And if at some point in time, let's hope it doesn't happen, if things start cropping up from there, it's still going to be a problem because you're having people who are not educated enough with regards to the safe handling of food products, the preparation of food products. So it was just my thinking that when we're having these recalls as a preventative measure, corrective measure, and we really appreciate it as a food industry, but we also have to think of the end user, who's our customer. Are they in tune? Are they in line with why we're doing this?
Valid points. Thanks for the question. Somebody else?
Thank you, Rika. I think our time is up for today. So everybody will be moved into a waiting room and the judges will be given around 5 minutes to just deliberate on a winner, and you will be brought back after 5 minutes and the winner will be announced. So please do not leave us and wait for us to announce the winner. Thank you.
Okay, we'll just give us time to put everybody in the waiting room, please.
Who's taking the lead?
I think we're still waiting for them to.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, get everyone.
Sorry.
My apology.
Do you want me to put everybody in? I've just got yourself and Akuta and obviously English judge. Do you want me to put everybody into the waiting room?
No, this is fine. So because Cleo,
yeah, so everybody is in the waiting room.
Okay, perfect.
Shanice, is it only a winner or is there a second prize as well?
Well, at first we budgeted for 2,000 Rand for the winning group. So
Sorry, Shani, sorry. It was not 2,000, like 2,500 Rand for the winning group, which was going to have 5 individuals. That's where we are.
And no second prize.
And then we're not going to have a second prize because the groups are going to be 5 individuals each. But now our groups have one person, except for one group that has 2 people.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you can call it an executive decision here with you, Elna, present, whether we can split into 3, depending on how you guys judge. So myself and Shanice have nothing to do with regards to the judging. So you guys can let us know, even as you as judges right now, with regards to how we structured the prize money, whether you would like us to consider changing that prize money to having first, second, and third, or stick to what we had initially. It will allow you, the judges, to guide us on that one.
Okay. Good. So we will talk about how the winners and then we'll decide on how the prize money shall be divided.
Yes, please, Elna, that will be much appreciated.
Okay, good. Rika, would you like to then tell us your view on the 4 groups?
I think of all the groups, the salad recall was to me the best structured and understood the process the best. The rotundas one was also good. The carrot one was a bit lacking in that understanding the hazard. But the chips one, I thought was a bit way off because one won't really recall for hypertension as a hazard, as a cause. So that was to me a bit misunderstood. So I would say the last 2 presentations on par, then the botulinum one, and then the chips one.
Okay, and Lalaya, how did you feel?
Yes, Prof. For me, group 3 is called the highest, 18, which is the one also on chemical reagents detected in ready-to-eat salad. And so the rest of the groups, group 1, group 4, 5, is called 14. I think also for me on the group 1, group 4, and group 3 on the hazard category, I think I wasn't that satisfied with justification there. But for me, group 3 scored the highest, 18. I will score them. I feel like they did a good job there.
Yeah, I also agree that Tafara had the best understanding presentation, and she also included root cause analysis, which I don't think the others included. And then I agree with Rutendo, although she did miss the peanuts issue. She didn't discuss it. She just basically decided it's not relevant. And I think she did explain it well, but it should have at least featured, I feel. But I do agree. Secondly, for me, unfortunately, the botulinum group and the seasoning groups made critical errors. So for botulinum, it was scientifically in terms of not understanding botulinum, and then, as you say, for the last group, not indicating that this was really a quality issue. So we are in agreement. Are we only going to give 2 prizes then? Because the others actually made sort of really, their presentations were actually quite flawed. Or how do you feel?
I agree. I agree.
Okay.
I also agree.
Okay, but I must say, I would suggest each of us maybe just give a bit of feedback, but I must say, I am so impressed with these presentations and the way they presented their confidence and the fact, you know, they did this literally overnight. So okay. So how will we divide the money? Is it 2,500 Rand, Nwabisa?
Where am I? Sorry. Yes, it was 2,500
Okay.
Rand, the budget money. I was trying to get my mind.
So how do you feel? 1,500 and 1,000, or do you want to?
Okay, can I quickly ask, in your first prize, is that in that group, is it one person or two people? Because you have to think, because
One person,
one,
and yeah.
even the second group is also one
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
Okay, then I'm happy with, sorry, let me not say I. Shanice, how do you feel? First prize 1,500 and then second prize 1,000 Rand.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And Rika, Tlalayo, how do you feel about that?
In terms of the price,
Seems fair.
Yeah.
yes, it is fair. It's just that for me on the second prize, so I don't have, as group 1 and group 4 and 5, I've scored them equally. I think now that will be on Prof and Rika.
Yes, I think the chocolate one was better than the one that's falling by the wayside now.
Yeah.
I hear what you say about the peanuts, but if you look at all the chocolate recalls in the world was about salmonella due to cleaning matters. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
So
thing
I
is
think
that, yeah.
I think she missed that, but it's purely because of time. No? Just give me a sec. I just need to answer somebody here quickly, but I agree with the principle so far.
Okay. Now I agree. And then in terms of the case study, it didn't indicate, if it had given a timeline, it would have got, but she explained it well. So I think it's okay. So we are in agreement. The winner is Tafara with the ready-to-eat salads. And then second prize is Rutendo with the chocolate bar.
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Okay, so I think we can bring them back.
Okay.
Sorry that I had to go out.
Huh?
Sorry that I had to leave, but I'm back.
It's okay. So
we've brought everybody back.
So I will give a bit of feedback. Tlalayo will give a bit of feedback. Is that okay, Tlalayo? And then Rika, will you give feedback finally and announce the winners?
Yes. I just don't have their names. I just have the. Who was doing the salad one again?
Sorry. Our participants are back in the room. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. I'll rather do you do it.
Okay.
You do it.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. So then let's give feedback. You give feedback, Tlalayo give feedback, and then I'll do the announcement. Okay.
Much appreciated. I did an audit here at the company, so they allow me in the boardroom and they wanted to lock. So I just want to make sure that I can get out.
Tlalayo, will you start with a bit of feedback?
Okay, Prof, thank you. First of all, I'd like to congratulate all the groups for good presentations that they gave. I think for me, the most critical points were on Hello? Can you hear
Yes.
me? Oh, okay. I think for me, the critical points were on the categorization of the hazards, because there I feel like one should be a clear picture on how to categorize the hazards and also how to give a proper justification. Yes, so there, that was the main critical point. From there, otherwise, I feel like on the steps to product recall, most groups did well there. Most of the procedure steps were explained. And then on the prevention also, they also did well. So overall, I'm just happy with the presentations, except there on some few groups lost the point for me on the categorization of the hazard. I don't know, I just don't want to give or mention the name of the groups because I want to leave that so to when we announce the winner.
Okay, thank you, Rika.
I would like to congratulate all the groups. If you're thinking of the time limit that you had to do it, as well as the level of experience, all put a lot of effort in. There's some room for improvement, and I don't think we always understand what a CCP is and what a food safety hazard is, but I'm pretty sure from here on we can take that further. Thanks, Amol.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so I would like to concur with the other two judges. I would also like to thank all of you for participating. We cannot, MySAAFoST cannot do these hackathons if you are not willing to participate and put in the work that you did. And remember, the fact that you took part in this and you are getting this feedback, it will help you to, I hope you go back and think about it. And the mentioning of the hazard as being the issue that may have caused some of you not to be ahead of the pack, that is the most difficult to identify, is the hazard. It is not easy to do. And the two groups that we've identified, I would, the presentations and the content and everything was really good, but there's always room for improvement. So it is for me, and I would like to just say that we agreed, the judges. There was no question. We immediately agreed. So the second prize of R1,000 will go to Rutendo, who did the chocolate bar a case study. And while we did have some discussion on identified of the hazard, it was also indicated by Rika clearly that worldwide most chocolate is recalled due to salmonella, and that is a very, very valid point. So congratulations, Rutendo. And then drum roll, the winning team or the winning team of one today with a really excellent presentation is Nafara with the ready-to-eat salads with a 1,500 prize. And then thank you to the two other groups for participating. And I'm sure that if you had heard the presentation by Rika beforehand, I'm sure that would have also, I'm sure you wish you had heard that beforehand. So let's all congratulate you and thank you for inviting us to take part in this, Shanice and Nwabisa, and I'm sure that you will have some final words.
Congratulations to our winners. And thank you to all the presenters for the time and effort you put into your presentations. They were wonderful. A big thank you to the following people for their assistance: our judges, Professor Elna Bays, Ms. Rika Kempt, and Mr. Cleleo Marule. A thank you to the Turners team, Sharon and Letitia, for joining and assisting. And to the SAAFoST members, Ingrid, Irene, and Tetse. We couldn't have done it without all of y'all's assistance. And finally, thank you to everyone who joined us this afternoon. Take care and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you.